Okay, welcome back to members of 121 Community Church in Grapevine, Texas, and our ongoing study in the book of Revelation. And we're looking at the introduction, and we're going to look at G.K. Beale and his introduction from the New International Greek Testament commentary, published in 2013 by Erdman's Publishing. We'll look at pages 1 to 28. But it is Beale's introductory comments, and I think they're pretty good. So we're going to take a look at his approach to an introduction to Revelation. So if you look at block 1, we begin with the growing imperial cult in Asia Minor. And Beale tells us that the date of the book of Revelation is 95 AD, during the reign of Domitian. The book is directed against compromise with Roman culture. Christians were being required to participate in some degree within the imperial cult. Persecution arises because the Christians refused to worship Domitian. So under this persecution depended on local governors and their enforcement of the imperial cult. Toward the end of Domitian's reign, there was much more chaos within society. Domitian insisted on greater divine titles than previous emperors had demanded. And the charge against anyone who didn't participate in emperor worship, they were called an atheist. So Christians were called atheists if they didn't worship Domitian. So note 3, we look at Christians as refusing to worship the emperor. A person could also be charged with treason for practicing Christian lifestyle. Penalties included death and exile, and we know that John was exiled to the Isle of Patmos. The main charge was disloyalty to Rome. And the church's rejection of this cult was perceived as that which should be punished. And that led to punishment and exile. The relatives of Jesus were brought before Domitian because they were perceived as belonging to the house of David. Christianity was perceived as an illegitimate Jewish sect that was not afforded the privileges given to Jewish synagogue practices. The Jewish synagogue was given freedom of worship within Roman rule, but Christians were considered an illegitimate Jewish sect and were not afforded that privilege. Roman policy became increasingly intolerant of any and all Christians. And so we have, toward the end of the first century, this intolerance of Christians in note 5. Domitian was to be addressed as master and God. Revelation depicts the refusal of emperor worship as the basis for persecution. John expected an intensification of persecution in the very near future. So we get our context in block 1. We get the context of a growing imperial cult, and we're looking at the reign of Domitian. We're looking at toward the end of the first century, AD 95, and those who don't participate in imperial worship are punished. In John's case, he was exiled to the Isle of Patmos, separated from the church where he was a bishop, separated from his church, the regional church in Ephesus, that had kind of a regional authority over all the churches of Asia Minor. But now John is exiled to the Isle of Patmos. We now want to take a look at the sixth king in block 2. So in block 2, Beale tells us that the imperial cult and its temple had a colossal statue of Domitian within it, referred to in Revelation chapter 13. John alludes to Daniel 3 and Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in their refusal to bow down to the colossal statue of Nebuchadnezzar. The imperial cult included celebrations and festivals as well. People were expected to offer sacrifices in front of their homes when Domitian's procession went by during a festival. And obviously, if those sacrifices weren't evident, then you were disloyal to Rome. There was social support for Domitian from the elite. Domitian attempted to establish a network of imperial worship in Asia Minor. The social elite of Ephesus supported Domitian's cause because they sought increased provincial power for themselves. John wrote because of the cumulative effect of provincial development. The social elite were seeking better benefits for their position by supporting the imperial cult. So you had Roman pressure, you had social pressure on the Christians to compromise their faith. We get to the concept of Babylon, which is used in the book of Revelation. Let's go to Block 2, Note 3, in Babylon again. I want to reinforce this. Babylon refers to Rome in most Jewish literature after 70 AD, because Rome destroyed the temple. And Babylon had destroyed the temple in the 6th century BC. That influenced John also. The Apocrypha books, 4 Ezra and 2 Baruch, written after 70 AD, gave Rome the name Babylon. So we look at the earliest church history traditions. In Note 4, Irenaeus puts the reign of Domitian as the time of John's apocalypse. The beast of 666 is Latinos, and that means the Roman Empire, prophesied in Daniel 2 and 7, that spoke of the fourth kingdom, a time of great apostasy. But the key note here in Block 2 is this Note 5, the 7 kings. We need to pay attention to this. In Revelation 17:9, 7 mountains are mentioned. These are the 7 hills of Rome, and these mountains represent 7 kings, we're told. And it breaks down as follows. 5 have fallen, 1 is, and the other has not yet come. The 6th king is the one in power when John writes. So the question is, who is the 6th king? That gives us who is the reigning emperor during the writing of Revelation. So if you go to this Note 6, Nero cannot be the 6th king because he is already dead and not reigning. Caligula was the first Roman ruler after the New Age, inaugurated by Christ's crucifixion and resurrection. Therefore, if we begin with Caligula, you have Caligula, Claudius, Nero, Vespasian, Titus, and Domitian. Caligula was the forerunner of the Antichrist of Matthew 24:15. He was the abomination of desolation because he sought to have a statue of himself put into the temple. So there's your 6, and the 6th king is Domitian. But you'll notice that all 6 refer to the beast. They are the 6 kings. And you have Caligula, Claudius, Nero, Vespasian, Titus. Titus destroyed the temple. And then Domitian. Caligula was considered Antichrist. Matthew 24:15 mentions that that this is the one standing in the holy place. And that's what Caligula sought to do by putting a statue of himself in the Jewish temple. That'll take us on to Block 3. Now in Block 3, we take a look at the beast. In 1318, the number of the beast is given as 666. Greek readers would not be familiar with Hebrew numerology, and Beale points out that the Greek therion equals supernatural beast, and that does equal 666 in numerology. And therion means an an emperor with a beast-like nature. In other words, refer back to the six names in Block 2. Those 6 names are emperors with beast-like natures. We know Caligula was evil. We know Claudius. Nero was the one that burned Christians alive and had the games in the Colosseum. And currently Domitian isn't reigning when John writes his Apocalypse. So we refer back to those 6 names when we consider the reference in Revelation 13:18. Now, under discerning spiritual danger, after 70 AD, Babylon is used for Rome within Judaism. Revelation 1:7 and Zechariah 12:10. Zechariah 12 is a prophecy concerning Israel's redemption. It is combined with Daniel 7:13. It refers to eschatological deliverance. Tribes of the earth equals all the nations. Revelation 1:7 says, what is said of Israel is transferred to all of the repentant people of the earth. Among all the nations, those who believe. In Zechariah 12:6, Jerusalem shall be inhabited again in her own place. And that is equated with the coming of Christ. Behold, he comes with the clouds, and every eye shall see him. So it speaks of eschatological redemption and salvation for all repentant people of the earth. The new Israel, the new family of God, the new huioi, the new children of God. But key for us in this introduction here is that what Beale wants to do in this first introduction is he clearly wants to put forth a firm hypothesis that the date for the apocalypse is not an early date prior to the destruction of the temple. It is a late date, certainly after the destruction of the temple. That's key because some commentators argue for an early date, but Beale says we must take the later date of 95 after the destruction of the temple, and that fits with the 6th king. It fits with the growing imperial cult. It fits with Domitian, who would exile people. Nero wouldn't. He just executed them, burned them alive, or fed them to lions. But Domitian did exile Christians, and so Beale is using this introduction to put forth the hypothesis that the date of the apocalypse is AD 95. That'll wrap up the first introduction. We'll have a second introduction by Beale again in our next lesson.